finished, I would request the speakers, because we are running short of, we are behind schedule by 45 to 1 hour. So our next speaker would be Mr. Saurabh Mukherjee, Vice President, Data Management, Accenture Digital. Mr. Mukherjee.
Hi, good afternoon, august audience, my fellow industry colleagues and persons from the media. Yeah, hi. So, I think right from the morning we've been hearing a lot about Internet of Things, and a lot of the fundamental concepts have already been talked about. I would just take a step back and quickly reiterate what this is basically all about, right? So, the Internet of Everything, as one of my colleagues from Cisco mentioned, is essentially a network of physical devices that are able to sense, collect information and disseminate that information, and that are basically able to communicate with each other and with the external world. We also heard that the number of such devices even a couple of years back was about around 10 to 11 billion, and maybe about 5 years from now that's projected to go up to something like 50 billion. And if you really look at the expenses or the expenditures that are actually happening in the world of industrial Internet of Things, as we sort of tend to call it, it was to the tune of around $20 billion around 2012, and by 2015, based on Accenture study, it's expected to go up to $500 billion globally. So this is definitely a very hot topic to look at. But I think the key objective of the discussion today is to really look at what's the impact of IoT, and considering the fact that these are very early days of IoT adoption so far as the Indian economy is concerned. What's the roadmap that we really want to take, and what are the key enablers that we are really looking at? So, and as part of the Accenture study that we've done, we really look at three broad impacts of the Internet of Things. And we look at the business impact, the consumer impact, and the public sector impact, right? So when we talk of business impact, if you really look at the business impact, let's look at some of the large businesses, and the business impact would be in the terms of the sensing that we do in the production systems, the supply chain, the logistics, how you actually gather data from the large fleets that you are managing, the capital equipment that you are managing, or even if you are a small retailer, the information that you are gathering from maybe your inventories or the stock that you are maintaining on the floors. This could be some basic examples. And we'll look at other examples as we go along. If you're looking at consumer impact, I think the examples are plenty. Starting from the basic devices like your smartphones and smartwatches, to some more sophisticated examples like the wearable devices like the Google Glass, or more sophisticated home automation systems like automated lighting or automated temperature control, remote healthcare monitoring systems. We saw quite a few examples in course of the day today. A lot of healthcare and a lot of lifestyle products in the consumer space. Very interestingly, a lot of public sector impact that we are actually seeing in this space. There are a lot of countries in the Southeast Asian economy where we are already doing pilot projects where we have sensors installed in the garbage bins in the different parts of the city. And the sensors actually give out alarms only when the garbage bins are full, so that the pickup trucks go to those parts of the town only when the garbage bins are full. So what it essentially means is you're actually saving on fuel consumption. right? Also, when you're actually managing the temperature control through smart thermostats or smart air conditioning systems, you're actually saving a lot of money in terms of power consumption. So some basic examples of public sector impact, and we would see how all of these can actually create growth opportunities through Internet of Things. So now let's look at how does IoT actually deliver faster growth. So all of these, and I was talking to a lot of my industry colleagues during the separate, the different, the breakout sessions and all of that. So how can actually foster growth, or is it all very fancy and all very theoretical whiteboard stuff, or does it really mean anything concrete, or how do you actually monetize all these concepts, right? So let's look at these 4 dimensions that we really focus on for a lot of our Accenture clients. So the first thing is greater efficiency through, the greater productivity through operational efficiency. And the immediate example that comes to mind is how you achieve operational efficiency. And I will actually give a few examples. So if you really take a step back and go back to the basic definition of Internet of Things, what this essentially means is you would have sensors or sensing devices that would actually send out tons of data in real time, right? And you can actually put advanced analytics on top of that, and you would be able to make predictions about the future. So what it essentially means is that you can take proactive actions, and what we have seen based on our study is that if you really look at some industries like manufacturing, oil and gas extraction, airlines, mining, I will share some statistics with you. We have seen examples where manufacturing industries, for example, we've seen maintenance costs go down to the extent of 30%. We've seen breakdowns go down to the extent of 70% in some situations, and planned repairs can actually go down to the extent of 12%. And I'll actually share a case study with you. So back in 2013, which is 2 years back, Accenture partnered with General Electric, GE, and we created a platform called Teleris. This platform is operational as we speak. So as we all can understand, the biggest challenge for the aviation industry is flights being grounded for technical reasons, right? So if a flight is not able to take off, it means a huge lost opportunity, right? So you have to actually, you lose out because of customer dissatisfaction. There is, the crew wages that have to be paid out, and a lot of associated expenses, right? So what the Teleris platform does is, so though it's a platform that Accenture developed in partnership with GE, but it's actually offered as a service to airlines which are not using instruments that are manufactured by GE. So it's open to all manufacturers. It's actually offered as a service. So on a proactive basis, the platform does a tail-to-tip monitoring of all airline devices and equipments that are being used in the aircrafts, and all of the sensor data or the instrumentation data that comes out is being constantly fed to an analytics platform that is hosted on the cloud. And based on the analytics modeling that we do, if we figure out that an airplane is in not the right operating condition, we sort of make the right decisions in terms of, this airplane should not take off, there is a backup airplane that needs to be deployed, the whole planning needs to be redone and all of that, right? So that actually saves a lot of money. So the Teleris platform is operative for the last 2 years. And it's a classic example of operational efficiency which improves the productivity, for example. So this is a huge area where you can actually save a lot of money. The second one is again a classic opportunity of business growth, and I think this is the biggest imperative for an economy where you actually have to come up with new business models. And so what does it really mean? So the whole idea is you have to come up with what we are calling as a hybrid model, and the hybrid model means that if you are a product manufacturing company, you have to actually transform yourself into a product service company. And I'll give you a couple of examples for that. So a lot of you may be aware of this company called Michelin. So Michelin is one of the 3 largest tire manufacturing companies of the world, along with Goodyear and Bridgestone. So Michelin is a pure and simple tire manufacturing company, right? 3 years back in 2012, what Michelin started doing was they started putting sensors in the tires that they manufacture. And the sensors were also put in the cars that were using their tires. So what the sensors were doing is, in real time, the sensors were capturing data about temperature, the ambient conditions, the pressure of the tires, the speed of the cars, and all of these data were being transferred in real time to a data store that was hosted on the cloud. And there was some real-time analytics that was being performed on fuel consumption. And there were Michelin operators who were actually coaching and guiding the drivers of those trucks that were using the Michelin tires on what is the optimum route, what is the optimum speed that they should use to maximize or rather to minimize the fuel consumption. This was happening, this has started happening way back in 2012. So, and this was actually being offered as a service. So classic example where a product company which was just manufacturing tires actually changed itself into a hybrid model and became a product service company. So this is something that we are calling as a servitization of your business model. That was one example. Example number 2, yet another Accenture client, Daimler. I think we are all aware of the car manufacturing company. So Daimler has a classic service now in a lot of these markets where they manufacture a car-to-go service. So car-to-go is a service which is actually giving a lot of competition to these radio taxi services like Uber. So car-to-go works on the premise that if you are registered with the service, you can go to any part of the city and there is a designated parking area. You swipe a card, get into a Daimler car, drive that car to wherever you want to go, park the car and just get out of the car. And that's it. You don't have to call the cab, book the cab and all of that. It is just that it's a Daimler car and you pay by either the duration for which you have driven, you either pay by mileage or you pay a monthly fees. Right? So no issues around waiting for the cab or all of that. So it's just a Daimler car, you use your designated subscriber card and you use it. So Daimler, a car manufacturing company, changing itself into a service company. So this is basically a market opportunity where you are servitizing your, just to quote some figures from Accenture study, in 2012, if you look at the M2M market, right, so the machine-to-machine market for the automotive industry in the US, that market was a $22 billion market. In 2022, which is 10 years from that span, that market is set to become a $422 billion market. And 89% of that $422 billion is actually going to come from aftermarket services, which means you have to adopt to that hybrid model of marketing. So IoT, so far as the technological aspect is concerned, is fine, but if you really want to channelize it for growth, the key focus should be on how you actually change your business model, how you really make it a hybrid model, right? The third thing is improve quality of life, right? And this is where the growth opportunity comes from how the society embraces IoT, right? So I mean, how easily does society adopt the use of smartwatches? Right? So, or the fitness devices, remote health monitoring devices. I would not go into the details of those examples because I saw excellent videos in the course of the day and a lot of my colleagues talked about the immense benefits of all of those remote health monitoring opportunities. So I think beautiful examples throughout the day. The last one is brilliant. So we talk about cycles of innovation and very importantly innovation outside industry boundaries. So you are a company and you are operating within a certain industry boundary. You do something today, but you start doing something else tomorrow. Classic example, Google buying a company called Nest Thermostats, right? So Google acquired that company. Nest Thermostats is where you do, automated controlling of temperatures. And Nest Thermostat today has a huge market share. Google investing in driverless cars. So what happens tomorrow when our cars become driverless? As you can see immediately, as soon as the driverless cars become ubiquitous, the automobile licensing industry is immediately threatened. So car licensing, you don't even have a driver, right? The government licensing or automobile insurance, those industries would be threatened. But that's fine, right? That's how the whole economy progresses. But Google is basically now operating outside its industry boundary. Apple So we all know Apple for the iPhone and the iPad and all of those devices, communication devices and entertainment devices and all of that. But Apple getting into the health kit platform, so it's getting into remote health monitoring. It is checking your sleeping patterns. It's tracking your health data, which means Apple is now competing directly with health insurance companies, healthcare providers, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies. So innovation outside your industry boundaries. And again, that's a huge opportunity for IoT growth. So these are again the 4 parameters that where IoT can actually deliver faster growth. Some strong messages here. So Chinese government by 2015 deciding to invest $800 million. There are some messages by David Cameron in the UK. UK, by the way, has already invested $125 million by 2015. Germany has actually started a program called Industry 4.0, which has specific focus on Internet of Things. The United States has a program called Smart Manufacturing Leadership Coalition, which is focused purely on Internet of Things. India has already declared the Digital India movement. So we are all on the right track and we are all doing fine. Now, I put in this slide because it's a very interesting one. I think throughout the day, we've talked about technology and why technology is important and all of that. This slide has a bit of history. So this is a study in history. If you look at, and this has to do about the spread of electricity, back in the day. So if you look at between 1902 to 1942, these 4 countries, US, France, UK and Italy, were very close to each other in terms of electricity generation and all of that. Suddenly in the next 30 years, between 1942 and 72, you see the United States making a leapfrog and actually leaving all of the 3 countries way behind in the adoption of electricity generation. Now, why do you think that happened? It's mainly because in the United States, the social adaptation of electricity was much more than all of these other 3 countries. So electricity reached more number of households. People started investing more in refrigerators and washing machines and vacuum cleaners than all of these other 3 markets. So the message is, it's not enough to have the right technology. It's also important to make sure that your businesses and your society embrace all of these technologies and these technologies become part of your daily life. Based on that, what Accenture has done is we've defined an index called NAC Index. What we call this is a National Absorptive Capacity. So it's fine, we have all of these technologies, we are all trained on that, but are the people really absorbing all of these technologies? Because unless that happens, the growth is not going to happen. And the way we see is that can happen only by 4 means, right? So the first thing is the business commons, which is the obvious thing. Do we have the right business environment, right? So do we have the right enablers through government, law and order, the right investments in research and development? The second thing is takeoff factors. So are these excellent ideas restricted only to some niche players and great firms, or are these really spreading out? What is the spread of science, technology, engineering and mathematics skills in the whole ecosystem? Are these really spreading out? Then the transfer factors. Are society and business really embracing these technologies and are they spreading out? And the last thing is the innovation dynamo. Are people really innovating? Are these things really part of our lives? Are these becoming pretty obvious? The use of Google Glasses, for example, or the use of all these smart devices, health monitoring devices. Are these really getting ingrained in our DNA? So all of these 4 factors will actually determine the national absorptive capacity, which in turn is going to drive our growth. And the key thing that we understand is in all our offices, in all our workplaces, in all our manufacturing units and production systems, we need to bring about a massive change in the working habits of people in order to make sure that IoT really makes an impact and really drives growth and prosperity. And these are the 4 broad work practices that we feel should be redefined. And the first thing is about decision making. So push decision making to those parts of the organization where the knowledge really exists. And there's a classic case study, and these are all Accenture clients where we've sort of implemented this, not in India but in different parts of the geography. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is because these are lessons that Accenture really wants to bring and implement in India. right? So you look at 7-Eleven, which is a very famous retail chain in different parts of the world. So in 7-Eleven, what we did was a massive business transformation program, where what we did was all of these people on the shop floor, what we told them is, instead of placing an order for next week, make sales forecasts. So just don't put a sales order, make a sales forecast based on the sales that had happened last week, based on a study of customer behavior or other conditions, like the weather conditions, or maybe a football game that's coming up, so people would buy more chips and beer so that they can sit at home and watch the match over the weekend. So start making sales forecasts, and you do that using analytics and all of this other information. So put the decision making to people on the floor who are actually selling the chips and the beer to the people, not some people sitting in your headquarters. The second thing is human digital collaboration. Classic case study, so there is an iron ore mine in Australia where the tractors and the machines which are actually moving earth, these are automatically operated. So there are no human beings who are actually driving those machines. So the operators are actually sitting hundreds of kilometers away in a command center. And these machines are driven automatically, and they are being monitored by analytics data which are captured through the sensors which are installed on all of those devices. The real-time adaptation, I talked about the GE Accenture collaboration. So we actually started that on automotive devices, and we extended that on the aviation platform. I talked about the Teleris platform earlier. And then finally, the last one is very interesting, which is experiment-driven design, which we did in Audi. So in Audi, what happens is, it's kind of a virtual lab. So even before, the car is designed, and it is still in the laboratory in a virtual environment, a customer can actually go and start selecting features, and all of that information in real time goes into the engineering and the R&D, and they can start putting together some of those features, right? So it's more of an experiment-driven design. So they try out all the feasibility and all of those combinations in real time. So this is the last slide, and sure. So this is my last slide. I think I talked about most of these things. 5 ways to win. Play to the country's strengths. So let's not get carried away by all of these concepts. So if it's depending on whether it's an agrarian economy or it's an industrial economy, we need to focus what are the IoT cases we need to focus on. Create a chain reaction across industries. We talked about that. Don't remain focused within your area of operation. Spread out and see whether you can cross boundaries. Resource deficiencies, we talked about that earlier, whether we need to create resources or invest in them. Collaborate across academia, NGOs and all of that. And of course shorten the investment lag, right? So it's not enough to just talk about it, but actually make investments and create the right ecosystem. And I would end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. Can I now request Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, Senior VP and Head Engineering R&D Services, Happiest Minds Technologies, to speak. One project needs more time for presentation, but unfortunately we are running short of time, and I would request the speakers to kindly restrict as much as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Radhakrishnan. Thank you, Bengal Chamber of Commerce, for giving the opportunity to come and present some of the experiences around IoT and Digital India. Just to give the context about, I come from Happiest Minds. Happiest Minds is a next generation technology company out of Bangalore, started by Mr. Ashok Sutta. The whole purpose of the company is basically focusing on the disruptive technologies and providing the solution in this digital age. The foundation of the company is based on the SMAC technology, and then we have added IoT, security and digital enterprise as the 3 major categories in which the company operates. So just talking about the IoT and the context of where IoT fits in the smart city context, I'll just give you a brief, the decade of where the data started coming in, right? The first decade was the decade of data. So we started collecting data because the computer becomes prevalent, so everybody had data to collect. Then it became information, then it became knowledge, and now what we call it is the actionable insights. So that's the 4th generation, that's where we are, because it's not just important to have a knowledge database, it's just not important to have a Wikipedia, but unless somebody can act upon it and take decisions real time, this data is not going to be important. So that's why we refer that fourth generation as an actionable insights. So we have seen the digital enterprise, we are seeing now a digital smart city in the context of a country, in the context of a state, and that's how it's actually coming up together. So IoT, if you look at it, it's two major broad areas that it gets adopted in. IoT in enterprise, that's where the adoption has started happening. So if you see industries, you see plant, you see retail, you see automotive. As an enterprise, a lot of people are focused on IoT right now because it's still a closed loop system when you talk about IoT in enterprise. The major factors that drives IoT in an enterprise is either increased revenues, low cost from your productions or your low cost of operations, your operational efficiency, that could be another factor, or basically a customer experience. You want to deliver a different customer experience, that becomes the factor. So that becomes the four major categories in which an IoT in enterprise happens. So a lot of companies are focusing on that particular stuff. But the moment we bring the IoT in a smart city context, it becomes a completely different picture. It becomes a completely different challenge. We have always seen the challenge that people can face with respect to cyber security that's going to be there. We are talking about 50 billion devices connected on the internet. That means the cyber security, the IP6, V6 address that's going to be allocated to each and every device is going to be available for threat, right? So I can give you two examples in which a real smart city can be adopted, right? A good way to look at it, or a positive outlook of a smart city, could be in the form of a noise pollution, right? So you want to actually just examine the noise pollution, and basically you have the sensors that are collecting the noise real time. You have citizens of the city who are at different position in the vehicle, outside the vehicle, contributing to the different reasons or the particular root causes for the noise. They are giving back. There are analysts behind who are actually looking at planning aspects of that, where this noise is going to be reduced, how the different architecture can be put in and stuff like that. So you basically build up a connected community in terms of actually seeing how the noise pollution can be reduced. The straight example, the other example extreme, that could be actually, if you have seen the main news that has come up, there was a plane, there was a hacker in the plane, in the US plane, and basically this hacker actually connected to the entertainment system of the Airbus, and then connected to the control system, and literally took the plane sideways. So he was not really a terrorist or anything, but he showed that a simple connectivity that is actually enabling the aeroplane today from an entertainment to your control systems can be literally hacked in terms of that particular stuff. So IoT actually brings up that kind of danger as well. So when I come to smart cities, there are three major aspects or goals that a smart city entertains. One is the environmental consideration. We are looking at smart energy, we are looking at pollution, we are looking at waste management, we are looking at water management, anything to do with environment. Second is the economics. Economy has to grow. We need to have lot more investments coming in, we need more jobs, and we need more of innovation that needs to happen locally. So that's the economies that is needed. And the third major goal is a smart governance or citizen friendly